Hi guys, this is John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru, coming to you to talk to you about validation. This is a very important topic in the area of healthcare, and so I wanted to cover that today, explain what validation is, and then go into some details about how you apply it to your documentation. You may have noticed my surroundings are a little bit different. I'm in my daughter's study room. Two daughters that use this room, and you'll notice that one of them is obviously a Star Wars fan behind me with the calendar with the picture of Rey from the recent Star Wars. So anyway, today we're going to talk about validation. So what does validation mean? Well, it means to prove that something is correct. And this is really important in healthcare. And to understand what the word validate means a little bit more in detail is to get to the root of the word. I like roots of words because they give a little bit more of a story of the meaning behind it. And so validate comes from the Latin root validus or validus, meaning strong, effective, powerful. And so we're trying to prove that our documentation has powerful support behind it. And if we can do that, we have validated what we've said. Here's an example from history about validation. I'm kind of also a little bit of a history nut. I appreciate historical facts. So it's been postulated, and there is evidence to support this, that during the 6th century BC, a guy by the name of Pythagoras, and you might remember him if you took geometry back in the day called school. He developed the Pythagorean theorem. He postulated that the Earth was round, and he had a little bit of evidence for it, but there was still a lot of validation that needed to occur. It was a valid, truthful statement, but there was more opportunity to validate it. By the 3rd century BC, so about 300 years later, we now had a lot of Greek philosophers and mathematicians who had proven within fair accuracy, given their day, how the size of the Earth and the relative curvature of the Earth, therefore. And so they further validated that. And in fact, you and I can validate this as well. If you've ever been in an airplane way up in the sky during a very clear day where there's no cloud cover, you can actually see the curvature of the Earth from that height. And we know, of course, astronauts out in space have certainly validated the spherical shape of the Earth. And so all of these measures, all of these things prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we live on a big round ball. So now I'm going to talk to you about how validation is proven in healthcare, more specifically related to therapy services. And perhaps one of the biggest ways we see this is in the analysis statement. And I've talked in other videos about how to formulate a proper analysis, but I want to talk about validating this statement because I see a lot of therapists make statements in analysis statements that are not valid statements. So here's an example. Suppose 10 days ago in a progress report, a patient was reported to be moderate assistance for some kind of function, and then today they were reported to be min assist in that same functional area. Now, the therapist in their analysis statement goes on to say something like this: the patient is making gains in blank function due to improved strength, balance, and coordination. That is their analysis statement. So what is the problem with this particular analysis statement? Well, if this is the only information I've given you, then hopefully you can see the problem. So I'm going to give you about 5 seconds. Did you see the problem? The problem is that we cannot validate this particular statement that the improved function comes about because of the strength, balance, and coordination, because there are no measurements. Your objective measurements are what validate your analysis statements. Now, the analysis statement that we just looked at might be perfectly true. The problem is this: if you cannot measure it, you cannot validate it. So you might have been to my course where I talk about if you cannot measure it, you cannot treat it. Well, the same thing goes with validation of your analysis statements. You've got to be able to measure something to prove that it is actually accurate. And so we're going to look at how we might see that with measurements. I'm going to look at, first of all, a non-validated statement through measurements, and then a validated statement through measurements. So we're going to take that same statement, the patient's making gains in blank function due to improved strength, balance, and coordination. Now, it just so happens that on the last note, the therapist measured the strength at 3- out of 5. Balance, they measured with the balance portion of the Tenetti, 4 out of 16. And then they measured coordination as fair. And I put that in quotes because I'm going to come back to that. On today's note, they say strength is 3- out of 5. Balance is 6 out of 16 on the Tenetti balance section. And coordination is fair plus. So this statement is not valid. It is invalid. And so we can see pretty quickly from the strength that 3- out of 5 did not improve. So the statement of patient has improved strength is not valid. They did improve in balance. That is validated. But coordination, fair, good, plus. Fair, good, poor. Fair plus, fair. What does it mean? It's not a validation because it's not objective. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the same statement and we're going to show valid measurements that help validate the analysis. So we have the same analysis statement, but now let's look at the last note. Mostly same measurements. 3- out of 5 strength was measured last time, wherever we're measuring on. And by the way, make sure you actually measure a specific body part and a specific motion. The balance was 4 out of 16 on the Tenetti, and coordination was measured as 1 out of 5 correct trials doing heel to shin movements. And of course, if you're a PT, and maybe even some of you OTs have learned to do that kind of measure. And there's other things we do like finger, nose, finger, things like that. Today's note, we show that the patient's strength in whatever body area we're measuring was 3+ out of 5. Balance was 6 out of 16 on the Tenetti balance section. And coordination, the patient got 4 out of 5 trials, heel to shin correct. Therefore, this analysis statement is proven to be valid because we've got the measurements to back it up. So what are some takeaways from all of this? If you make statements, please make sure you validate them with objective findings, because if you cannot measure it, you cannot validate it. Validation is going to do something from the review standpoint. You've got this person you're trying to convince they should pay for you. And so you want to establish credibility in their eyes, meaning that you want them to trust you. You want them to see that you're giving them information that is trustworthy. And if it's trustworthy, it's going to go a long way towards helping you get paid for what you do. And that, of course, is my whole bent on what I do to help you hopefully document better. So anyway, this has been John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done already. Please comment if you have any suggestions for further videos in the future. Thank you so much. Take care and God bless.